want to welcome everybody back to the 7 Golden Rings of Relationship Success. Today, class number 6. This one's subtitled, How to Cultivate a Hot Christian Marriage. Again, copyright on this PMC 2020. I'm joined here today. Ragnar, you there somewhere? Abednego, yep.
Absolutely.
And I just want to jump in right away. We've got so much here on content side that I want to get to, and we have a lot of things, obviously, with a subtitle of How to Cultivate a Hot Christian Marriage. There's going to be some hot button issues we'll get to, and we'll have a lot of fun. But I just want to let you know up front, for those of you just tuning in, we're going to have some really practical things that will help you in your relationship, because we have some people who are listening who are dating. We also have some people, and they're working toward marriage, those kinds of things. But we also have people listening who are already in a marriage, just started, or 20 years or 30 years, whatever. And some of those hot bedroom situations, some of those dead bedroom. So we're going to give you some practical things that we're going to go over today to help alleviate some of those problems and give you some hope on some things. So just wanted to start off on that and give a couple things as we get into this. I probably want to go to both of you on different items, but I want to set the stage on why we're doing this. Abednego, with your situation there in ministry, I'm working with a lot of guys too on the counseling side. I know you are, Ragnar. Some of the guys that you work with over the last several years on this project, we've been working on the PMC project, Positive Masculinity Crusade. There's so many things that have come up here that just need to be. So we're going to hit a lot of those, and this is class number 6, How to Cultivate a Hot. One of the things, because I've had people send in, call us. I know you guys have heard this too. Why do we have to do this? What is the problem? Can't we just look at the Bible and God tells us how to do this thing? And I don't know what the problem is on here. First of all, I just want to say that is really older order thinking on terms of that, because it's one thing to just say that when you get married or in a dating world, is that, hey, God said we have to do this now. And this is how we learned in the church back in the day at Bible school. No, in culture, in our society, the rules are different, okay? And we've talked about this in other shows, is that, listen, man, people want to get married, they run to the church house. If they want to get divorced, they run to the courthouse. And so there are different rules. And for us to think, whether we're Christian people or otherwise, people of faith or just some people on the street, whoever, for us to think that people out there aren't playing by different rules is naive, and it shows such a lack of awareness as to be in a total ignorant arrangement mentally, okay, that you think everybody's just going to follow the church rules here. If that's what it was, they wouldn't all be running down to the courthouse. So I don't want to put a negative slant on any of this right away. But when you look at in the church, over 50% of the people on their first marriages, on a 50% divorce situation, okay, it means we've got to address this somehow. So that's why we're getting into this. Also, another reason that we've talked about many times is that we're losing guys, okay? And we're losing guys physically. Abednego, they're not here walking on the earth. They found a way to check out when they got zeroed out on this thing. Either all their money's gone now on a divorce settlement, however this worked. And I guess we're moving to the bigger question, both of you, Ragnar too, later I want to address. It's really come up. Abednego, you've done some recent studies on church statistics, okay? And because we want to move, sure, keep a hot Christian marriage. Absolutely. That's what we're moving to, okay, on this conversation, this show. But can the church survive in this direction that we're going if we don't get this relationship in this bedroom situation? If we don't get this thing under control, can the church even survive? And I was talking to you earlier, Abednego, about this, and you had some startling facts for us about what happens in the church when there's a divorce, to the couple, to the single people. And I just want to let you address that real quickly. I know we're only a few minutes in, but this isn't 1950s Leave It to Beaver world on this, okay? And so, Abednego, go ahead on that and some of the things that you're finding on church attendance and what a nuclear family, what a strong leadership in the male position, what that means and how it affects the church.
Yeah, as far as how it affects the church, I mean, when a divorce happens, you end up losing everybody. You lose the whole family. One person doesn't stay, you lose everybody. And most of the time, they don't go back to church anywhere else. What I'm finding, and statistics back up, are the people who are devoted church people. They attend every Sunday. They're involved. They volunteer. They teach. Um, they do things like that. Uh, their actual rate of divorce is very very low. I believe it's less than 15-10%. It's very low. Where we get the divorce rates equal for Christians and secular is because when they look at everybody who claims to be Christian, um, that begins to skew the numbers. And so if you take somebody who is a very irregular attender, and so regular attendance used to be that you would miss maybe 2 or 3 Sundays a year. Nowadays, regular attendance for a lot of people is that maybe you go once or twice a month. Um, People who attend irregularly like that, uh, their rate of divorce is actually higher than people who are not Christians, who claim to not be Christians, and so that skews that number. But if you take and you look at the people who are devoted to the tenets of Christianity, to the teachings of Jesus, to gathering together as the church, that number is very low for people. Now, that's not saying that they don't have problems, and that's not saying that they're happily married. Okay, although we know that the lesser amount of sexual encounters they've had before marriage increases their marital happiness, their satisfaction in marriage. But there's a lot going on here. Can the church survive if it continues the way it is? I've answered this question before, and one of the things I just immediately said was no. Um, and I got thinking about that after I said that. And what I would really like to say is the church will always survive, no matter what. It's survived extreme persecution from very powerful political aspects in the past. It will continue to survive because the church belongs to Jesus. It's his church. And so the church will survive, but can it survive the way it's intended to be? Man, if men don't step up and take their leadership in the family, if we don't have that going on, if people are so unhappy in their marriages that they're divorcing this person and marrying that person, and you don't even know who goes with who anymore. Yeah, the church is definitely, it loses its effectiveness big time, because the church is supposed to be that example of the husband and wife, the marriage relationship, that marriage covenant is supposed to be the reflection of the covenant that we have um, between us and God. And so the world's looking at our marriages and they're saying, well, if Christians can't even get this marriage thing right, then what's the use? What's the use to go to church, and what's the use to have a relationship with Jesus? I would say look at the statistics of the people who are very involved, and you would see that those rates of marital happiness are usually higher. The divorce rates are very much lower. Um, and so, yeah, can the church survive? It'll always survive, but um, it's not going to be salt and light to the world like it's supposed to be, like it was meant to be. And so, as Christians, we definitely have to step it up in this area for sure. And that means we got to talk about it. We can't be quiet about it. We've got to have real discussions. And most men's groups don't ever get to this point. They never talk about the gritty stuff, the stuff that makes the marriage, because we know at the end of the day, the marriage is a sex covenant. It's a covenant, and it's a sexual contract where you're saying I'm going to get sex from you, and you're going to get sex only from me, and we're going to do this thing. You're going to fulfill my desires. I'm going to fulfill your desires, and so that happens. That needs to happen in the marriage, and so we should be doing that. And when we're not, man, yeah, it destroys the family. And when the family's destroyed, then that destroys the church. And when the church is destroyed, that destroys the community. And that's what we're seeing really in our culture right now, is a failure to do things really in a godly way.
You know, Abednego, let me go back here a little bit. You said something I just want to drill down on a little bit. And so if it's okay, I'm going to come back to you on this. You said, well, yeah, is the church going to survive? Here's the analogous part that I would, and I know you've got some thoughts on this, Ragnar, to get into in a little bit. Yes, the church can survive as an entity, okay? But one of the things, and this is also scripture, is that, you know, want lukewarm, okay? And this is all over the place in the Bible, is that I don't want lukewarm. I want people who are on fire, okay, to be worshiping Jesus, to be tracking down their faith and working out all these things about how they're convicted on what their faith really is, okay? So the analogous part on that, right, Abednego, is because people use this all the time. And they say this, and I think in many ways misapplied, and we can get into that maybe in another show. They talk about, well, you know, the church is to Jesus as the woman is to the man, you know, talking about this type of thing, right? Well, Jesus doesn't want any lukewarm church. He's not interested in seat time, okay? He's not interested in just, I'm here and yep, somebody checked attendance and I'm there, okay? And Ragnar, somebody, you know, put some money in the plate today, okay? And they read some Bible scriptures. They don't know what it is. And so I think one of the things, what you're talking about, yes, church should be around in some form. Is that the form it was intended to be? I mean, is that worthy of some guy dying on a cross for us about it, right? So the reason I'm going here is because there are a lot of marriages out there that survived. I mean, technically, they didn't go get a divorce. They hung around for 50 years and they had the wedding cake, right?
Right.
But they're not on fire. There's nothing going on in the bedroom. They're lukewarm, if that, all right? Everybody's miserable. And so it sounds to me like some microcosm of the church in many ways, right? And so that's where I'm going back to you on this, Abednego, is that it's not just important that the church survive in that somebody gets to wear a VBS t-shirt, right? If they're not excited about this deal. And so in the marriage side too, you know what I'm talking about on this parallel is that I'm not interested in keeping all these marriages together if everybody's miserable and nobody's happy about this thing. Number one is that's a terrible model for your kids. Number two is, right, anybody looking at that thinking, I want to get married like grandpa and grandma or mom and dad. No, nobody wants this, okay? And you can't hide this thing. When the romance is gone, there's no spark, this kind of stuff. Okay, so I go back to you on this, Abednego, is that, yeah, absolutely. There'll be a church, some remnant, some form, whatever, but how do we keep this hot? And it's the same answer, okay? It's the same answer. You find the answer to that. You find the same answer, how to fix all these relationships that have gone either lukewarm or non-existent or flatlined or dead bedroom. Abednego, I'm going to let you take that away on that because that's really the question is not what's our church roll look like? What's our attendance look like? It's about how many, okay, maybe you got 500 people, but if only 2 of them are on fire, what does it matter? Okay. In your relationship, if only one of the couple is on fire, what does that matter? Okay. Go ahead and take it away on your thought. I know you have some. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's not going to matter if just one person is what we say all the time, jumping on the football. If one person's on fire, can that work? Oh, man. I've seen all kinds of things. But typically if just one person's on fire and the other person's checked out, typically that doesn't come back from the brink. You're exactly right when you're talking about, well, what would Jesus want? Oh, he wants us to be on fire for him. He wants that relationship where we can't wait to read our Bibles or to pray or to gather with other believers and to learn what he's trying to say to us and to have communication. And he wants us to be on fire for him. And you're right. There are correlations between that and the marriage. The marriage needs to be on fire. And I realize, we're sitting here, 30 years of marriage, you gotta work on it just to keep that fire stoked. You can't just have the hot flames of all the stuff that you had going on in your 20s, and that's just going to carry you through forever. It does take a lot of work, but it goes back down to that Cheap Trick song, right? It always goes back to that. I want you to want me.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's what God wants of us. He wants us to want him. It's what we want of our spouses. We want them to want us. We want them to desire us. And so, that's extremely important. And it's important to have these conversations. I was just thinking about, I talked to a couple one time, had been married, I can't even remember, 30, 40 years. They were older, and they were having some serious trouble in their relationship. And what it boiled down to, it was a sex issue that they couldn't talk about. And they had never talked about, ever. They'd never said the word sex to each other. And so, it's so important that we have these conversations. It's so important. I'm glad for people who are tuning in to listen and to learn, because we've got a huge learning curve in the church. We fail to really address these situations the way we need to. We tell young girls and boys, it's dirty, nasty, wrong. You don't do it. You're a bad person. Oh, look at Jimmy, Joe, and Sally over there. She got pregnant. They're horrible people. Shun them, And we get this idea that it's bad, bad, bad. And for the most part, guys don't really have a problem with that. Girls do. And so on the wedding night, all of a sudden, they're supposed to flip the switch and be, some hot little vixen in the bedroom, and they can't do it. They have a hard time overriding the programming that's been in them since they were little bitty in Sunday school all the way up through, that said it's wrong, it's bad, it's dirty, it's nasty, and it's not. It's beautiful. God created it to be beautiful and wonderful and to be a bonding experience between a husband and a wife.
One of the things that, and I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna leave this up here, okay? We've talked about this before numerous times. This cheap trick thing. I want you to want me. And I think there's another level there that we really haven't gone into. And what I'm put on the board here, page 2, is we need a cheap trick relationship. You can't listen. And the reason I'm saying this, you guys are talking about, not only the lyrics are, I want you to want me. I need you to need. Okay, this is the same with Jesus, that relationship, but it's the same man and wife side to make it successful and have a spark, to have a hot Christian marriage. Now, let me go back here. It's really hard, Ragnar. Okay, what's hard is to have an on-fire bedroom, and there's people who aren't going to like what I'm going to say right now, unless there's some depravity. Okay. I didn't mean to give a nod to Seinfeld episode, but we all remember the episode where Jerry had the girl who was just too good. He couldn't get excited about her sexually. He said, I just can't imagine there's any depravity there. I just can't. So I guess the image in your mind is that, this idea of some street girl out here. Obviously, we don't want to go to that level, but there has to be some idea about depravity, some mystery here. Okay. And that's what Cheap Trick is. And that's what guys get excited about. And so this idea about Cheap Trick, there's a couple of meanings there. Obviously, I want you to want me. Okay. There's that level, but there's the level about a cheap trick. There's something nasty going on. There's some depravity going on here. Okay. And so I'm going to come to you, Ragnar, in a second, but I want you to think about this, Abednego. He's going to put some stuff together for us. But I guess before I go back to Ragnar on this, Abednego, the biggest problem that we've got, and we're going to tackle this here in a minute. Guys, we got some great stuff coming too. Okay. And I want to make sure I spell this right here, rectify. Abednego, if you can see this, we want to figure out, this is giving all the Christian people problems, and this is causing all the cognitive dissonance out there, is how do we rectify this? How do we be a person of faith, but yet we still have all these sexual needs as a human being? Okay, this is really causing a lot of people problems. I mean, for thousands of years today, and this is where the guilt and the shame comes in right here. Okay, but how can we, that God put this in us, by the way, these needs, okay, that not only that on the mental side, but physiologically, we're going to talk about some of this stuff too. And the marriage covenant, which you brought up a minute ago here, Abednego, in dead bedroom. How do you rectify, if you're in right now, you've been married for a while, how do you rectify, you're in a dead bedroom and you don't want to go get a divorce and you're trying to do this church thing. You've been breaking covenant. Somebody's been breaking covenant, probably both ways. And how do you get your sexual needs met under this umbrella of faith? Because you need regular and healthy sex. There's 4 different things here. And we got to figure out how to rectify this. And if we don't figure this thing out, us sitting here talking about some stuff ain't going to help anybody. Okay. So let me go back. Abednego, if you could put some thoughts together on that. I have some also. I'm going to go back here on some of these things. You know, mystery, we're going to get into that in a little bit. But this idea about the guys need to create this. Okay. Right. And cultivate this. That's a real strong side on yours, Ragnar. I'm going to let you take that away a little bit about how, as men, we create this and cultivate this in our relationships.
Yeah, I just got through with some counseling not too long ago. Just going through some things with a couple that's going to be married here before long, and one of the things I did was I looked her right in the eyes. I said, if you're not willing to have sex with him 3 or 4 times a week, at least, then just do us all a favor and let's just end it right here and move on down the road. She kind of looked at me, because she's a church girl and she's not used to hearing people talk like that. But I turned to him and I said, but your job is to make sure that you bring that out in her, that desire for her, that she wants to do that with you. So many times what we do, the default as Christians, is just to go point to scripture and say, well, hey, 2 Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 7, Paul says, your body's my body, your body belongs to me. And so I'm going to go borrow my body for a little while. And I'm going to, that doesn't make her want to. And if we go back to the cheap trick thing, I want you to want me. Well, the best you're going to do is some kind of a transactional sex, a starfish sex, the duty sex, because in that same passage, it talks about that we should fulfill our marital duty. And, we don't want sex to become a duty. Like that sounds like equivalent to somebody's got to go clean the toilet, nobody wants to do that. And so, we want the kind of sex that validates us as a man, or validates, for a woman, she wants to be validated as a woman. I think, both parties want to be into this deal. But there's lots that men need to do, and we've talked about in some of our other sessions, we'll talk about more today, that we need to do in order to cultivate the desire in our wives. And one of the number one things that guys can do is you got to be the guy. You got to be the leader in your home. So many passages in scripture it talks about men being the leader in their home. You can't default leadership to your wife. When you do that, then you're putting a masculine role on her, and she will resent you. The catch to all that is that when Adam and Eve sinned, and God brings the curses to them for their sin, he goes to the serpent, says, "Hey, you're going to crawl around on your belly now," and that kind of thing. He looks at the woman, he says, "Okay, here's what's going to happen to you. Your pain is going to increase in childbirth." And then he says that you will desire to control him, but I've placed him in authority over you. Now, a lot of versions will say that your desire will be for him, which makes it sound great, like awesome. She's going to desire me. That's not what it means. It means she's going to desire to have your place, your role. She's going to desire to control, to lead. And so that's the rub. That's the friction. Women, that's part of the curse. They're wanting to control the relationship. They're wanting to run the relationship. They're wanting to lead the relationship. And a lot of guys will default that. They'll be like, well, she wants to do it, so I'll just let her do it. Well, she wants to discipline the kids, I'll just let her discipline the kids. But when you default that, when you vacate your role as a godly man in your marriage, then it flips it all. And then she's over you and she resents you. She doesn't want to have anything to do with you. And it creates that cold bedroom situation. And I think we see this in the church setting so many times. We've got a bunch of guys who are nice guys who don't want to ruffle the feathers, who don't want to cause problems. If I'm just nice enough, she'll drip me some sex and it's all good. But you lose all the passion in it. The best you get is transactional. It's never validational. When you get the validational is when you step up and you do the things that God called you to do. When you take the role of, I'm going to discipline the kids as a man. When you have your wife discipline the kids, that's your job as a guy. She resents you. She doesn't want to have anything to do with you because she's having to take the masculine role. And so she can't be feminine. She can't be who God created her to be because you've got her in the role of, well, the role that you're supposed to have. And so it negates all the desire for her. She has no desire for you at all. And she's looking at all these other marriages going, I wish I had that. I wish I had that. I wish I had that. So yeah, you've got to, as a guy, you've got to step up. You've got to create that desire. And the best thing you can do is to be that guy that God created you to be. You know, Adam's whole thing, everybody says, I hear a lot of people say, well, Eve was actually the first person that sinned. She ate the fruit. She ate the apple, whatever. And it's like, no, because Adam's job that God had gave him was to tend the garden and everything in it. His job was to take care of the garden. Well, who was in the garden? Eve. He didn't take care of her. He didn't protect her from this serpent. He didn't make sure that she was protected, that she was safe. And so he actually created the first sin by failure to take care of her, even though she was actually the one that ate the fruit the first. And so, you know, it's this whole thing of, guys, we've got to be the man that God created us to be. We've got to take leadership in the home. You got to make decisions. You got to make decisions. We've talked about this before.
You know, Abednego, I'll tell you too, is that this is one of the big things, is that obviously anybody can show up and try to have some top-down thing. I think, Ragnar, when you talk about, though, cultivating this desire, I want to go with you for a while here on what that means to you. How have all these guys all over dropped the baton on this thing and let this go? Okay, when you talk about transactional sex, Abednego brought this up, versus validational sex. We want the cheap trick. We want the girl who wants us. We want this girl who says yes right away. We don't want all these rules. We don't want all this stuff. We want the girls who's crazy about us. Ragnar, what does that mean to you, hearing all this talk here for the last however long we've been going off? And how does that work in a real situation, okay, about getting into a deal where as a guy you cultivate that hot relationship where there's some polarity here, some back and forth, some anxiety? I want you to take that away, Ragnar, on that, and just let us know what your thoughts are. I know you've been taking all kinds of notes. I know you're dying to get in here.
I think that what you really have to realize when it comes to sexuality, I mean, we have street lights, we have satellites, we have TVs, we have the church, we have all this regulation and rules and things. But sexuality is primal. It's primal. It's biochemical. It's primal. It's spiritual. I'll give you all that, but it's also primal. And there is an instinct in man and woman's subconscious, or lizard brain, as we call it on here. There's a strong instinct for a woman that hasn't been damaged as far as abuse or something, and if she's straight, there's a strong primal drive for her to submit sexually to a man that she perceives as powerful. And we talk about here compassionate alpha, so compassionate power, not abusive power. But there's even examples of women submitting to abusive power. You see women going back over and over to the same guy that's abusive, and she goes to a different guy that's abusive, or they start going after murderers in prison, men that are in prison, or a village gets taken over 5 years ago with Vikings, and so she submits to the next guy because she's got to eat, she's got to survive. But that power also sometimes can throw her in estrus a little bit. So, you know, you can't solve a primal problem, in my opinion, totally with civilized left brain analytical algebra. It's primal. And so anytime there's a negotiation or anything like that, I mean, it's watching paint dry. It just dries her up. It's primal, and it's got to be done. It's performed more so than said, you know. And so, you know, just like Abednego had a counseling session a few hours ago, so it's the height of consciousness. I had a very nice evening and morning, and so that's the very height of my consciousness. I'm off on Wednesdays, and so, you know, nice dinner, a little time in the pool, a little music, But you got to make sure those primal switches are being flipped, and then you'll have validational. They want you. But you have to make sure that primal, and also there has to be a love there. There has to be, if they're straight and they're not been abused, and you're in a heterosexual relationship with this woman, for her to really blossom, there has to be that she's got to feel that safety of non-judgment and love and compassion around her, so that she can push that depravity and open it. And explore that. And once they feel that safety around them, and you're doing the leadership, and you're a mystery, and you pass fit tests and all these other things, then that stuff happens. And it happens often and frequently. But you have to make sure those primal triggers are getting triggered, because we talk about 50 Shades and some of these other things that have sold hundreds of millions of copies. That tripped primal triggers. You had a guy in there that was in charge. He was a billionaire. He was dark. He was mysterious. He was a little damaged. So most gals think they can fix him. He had a helicopter waiting. Everything was planned. The date was planned. He had security. Some guy tried to grab her. He took him down real fast. I mean, all switches that all these professional women, college-educated women, Christian women, all thrived and dove after this book because all of those primal switches were being clicked. All of them were being clicked. And so if you're not going to focus on the primal side of this too, then I'll go back to what Abednego says. Might as well just give up now, just give it up. Because to me, I've been on this earth a little while, over half a century, and I either want that primal energy or I'll just go watch Seinfeld reruns. I don't want it less than that. I'm not going to do that. Once you've had filet, sometimes it's kind of hard to go back to jerky sometimes, so I wouldn't want that. But that primal stuff's got to be flipped. And there's ways of doing that. I'll talk about that. But the primal thing, in my opinion, has to be done. And you can do all the other stuff. We're in a civilized society, but you have to trigger those primal drives in her. And when you do, she will look at you like you're a piece of filet right off the grill. And you will experience that. But you have to do that part of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really doesn't. It really does. Here's the problem that we run into, Ragnar. Okay, we've created all these nice little church boys. Okay, and they're nice. These are the guys. But they're a little bit too nice. Okay, and so people always say this. Well, I can't. And if you had to give $1 for every time you've heard this, again, you'd be a wealthy guy out here. And both of you have heard this. Well, I can't believe she's with that guy. How can she comes from a good family, good church, and she's out here. Look, man, he's banging this guy over here in the corner. What's going on over here? All right. And listen, a little bit too much nice guy on this. And you brought this up, Ragnar, and I want to go here. This isn't going to be a topic that most kind of guys in the ministry, at church, whatever, however you categorize this genre here, crossed over a lot of barriers over the last few weeks putting this series to go. So I don't want to try to create in who we are here. We're trying to reach guys. We're trying to reach awareness. And if we could just leave it at that, that's fine for me. But this idea I put up on here, Ragnar, you put up about primal triggers and you brought up 50 Shades of Grey. Let me go here. Because I don't think that the church learned what they were supposed to have learned from this on 50 Shades of Grey. I remember when this kind of came out, I don't even know, it's 5-6 years ago, 7, 8, if you want to go back to the beginning of this. And then it started creeping in. I started remembering this. I started, this kind of stuff, this talk, people want to go watch this movie. They're talking about this book they're passing around. Secretly, though, some of them. But and then it started getting more and more. Now you get church members putting this all over Facebook. And so did we learn everything we were supposed to learn from 50 Shades of Grey? Or did we just keep hitting that shame button and trying to put that thing back in the closet? Okay. And what I mean on this, on the 50 Shades of Grey, because there's a lot of different ways we can do on this. Whether you just want to call this and dismiss it as word porn or whatever you want to do and marginalize this thing, it got the attention of a lot of Christian women because, like you said, Ragnar, it hit a lot of primal triggers, right? But it made a lot of people in the church, even though many Christian girls, and you don't even have to say that, women of all faith, of all kinds, were drawn to read these books, grab these. There's no way you can have 150 million copies sold without you're hitting something in the site.
It's on E Network every other Saturday, the trilogy on Entertainment Network on cable.
Yeah.
Those three shows are on every other Saturday. Then the Saturday that's not on has got Sweet Home Alabama and a Notebook. Now the thing in Sweet Home Alabama and Notebook is both those guys and alpha guys.
Yeah.
The country boy that she used to be married to in Sweet Home Alabama, and she goes to the city boy, nice guy, comes back to the country boy again. He's edgy. He doesn't take her stuff. He pushes back on her. He passes her test. The same thing in Notebook. He's passing her test. He's edgy. He's like, you're right, whatever. And so those movies are on E Network, And then the following week, you'll see, I'm not kidding, at least once a month, you'll have those two on, and then you'll have trilogy. It was this on last Saturday. The 3 50 Shades movies back to back. Movies we love. The network is like 90% women viewers on that network. And they know what pulls in the ads on that. So those 5 movies are played every month on Entertainment Network channel, and it's populated by women. And they put those on the weekend nights because they know all these women are sitting there with their popcorn watching those movies over and over and over again. My girl owns Notebook. My girl owns Sweet Home Alabama. Seen them both 20 times. Can quote the dialogue.
Yeah.
Right? She's read the 50 Shades books. She knows movies. So, you know, it's not hard. I mean, let me see. How do I solve that Rubik's Cube? She's telling me what market research here. She's telling me what she likes. She's telling me what's attractive. She can recite the dialogue. She tells me, oh, wait, part's good. Watch this. I mean, she's got it memorized. What kind of reconnaissance do I have to do to behave in a certain way that might trigger some primal attraction there? I mean, it's not advanced calculus. The plan's laid out right there what to do. Just do it.
You know, you see this. Here's the funny thing, Ragnar. You know, Abednego, you see this all the time. How many women in the churches can quote you these movies back way better than they can quote the Bible back? Okay? When we talk about 50 Shades of Grey, again, people in however they want to view this stuff, because on the other side of it, people will talk about porn. Okay? And they're just really talking about excitation levels. Okay? Testosterone levels are spiked on this. Okay? Well, if you want to argue about that, Abednego, we don't even know, okay, what is porn then? Okay? And we don't even know what that is. Okay? That we've talked about so many times. And people argue about it. The deal is, if you have spiked in your testosterone levels, that got you excited. Okay. Now, obviously in the Middle East, you know, if somebody's ankle shows, look, for them, that's porn. They're excited about this. It doesn't matter. You can go onto any beaches down here in LA. They'll be wearing a thong or nothing, and nobody's excited about this. Okay. So there's not one universal thing. Ragnar, when you talk about 50 Shades of Grey, why did it grab all these gals in churches in Midwest and all these people who are supposed to be suppressed in all these sexual ways? Why did they come out of the closet and jump all over this stuff? Because they're not seeing this in their regular life, in their bedrooms, in their homes, in their relationships. Okay. And instead
the primal drive getting triggered, the universal primal drives in all women, unless they've been abused or they're not heterosexual, they prefer women or whatever. But I mean, it's heterosexual women that haven't been abused. These drives are there. They may be under 8 inches of dirt and silt, but
it's still
there.
It's still there. You know, it's
so, you know, I mean, there's the TV series Pole Dark back a few years ago, Crusader, I turned you on to. There's not a woman I've showed that to from 80 to 15. That first season of Pole Dark, not sit there glued to that, turned on, where can I find Ross Pole Dark? From 80 to 15. Now listen, most guys, maybe you want to watch and study that. Maybe you want to study that a little bit and see what's true in these women from 80 to 15. To me, that's why I own all 5 seasons. I recon that, you know. I mean, I've seen The Notebook 10 times. I mean, I understand the psychology behind it, and I implement it, and I provide it in my own relationship, not only for my own joy and to get my cups full, but it's my job as her partner to make sure her cup's full. She wants me to have that energy. She wants me to bring that energy, because you know what? If you want an affair-proof and divorce-proof relationship, bring that energy. Be the guy she sees in Notebook. Be the guy she talks about in 50 Shades. I mean, you don't have to be a billionaire with a helicopter, but you can provide a version of that. You can provide a small-town version of that. Be in charge. Flip switches when you walk into restaurants. Take charge. Open the corridor for her. Take charge. Make a reservation. Tell her what you want to steer in that night. You know, I mean, just take that. You can do a small town version of that kind of energy. I mean, it's right there. I mean, the research is right there. Those movies are on. entertainment channel every weekend. It's always full of women movies. They've been played 1,000,000 times, and millions of women watch every Saturday night eating their popcorn. Their research is clear. And the reason they have them on there, why? Because they sell advertising, because they're pumped full of feminine products and everything else on there that whole 3 hours every Saturday night. You won't see one man commercial on there. You won't see a commercial for any sauce during that Saturday night, I promise. It's all women. Why? Because they know the eyeballs, millions of women eyeballs are on to see this movie for the 30th time, and so they pump it full of female ads. I mean, the research is right there. It's not advanced calculus, you know.
And let me, Ragnar, what you're saying now, because somewhere along the way, you're talking about the tools, okay? You're talking about the tools that guys have available to them, but because Abednego, the churches have put this down, suppressed this, pushed a shame button on all this stuff, on the guilt button. They've taken all these tools away, okay? And all that really any guy wants, okay, is they want someone to touch your pee-pee out here. But what we've heard growing up, oh, that's naughty, that's dirty. You got to go out, you got to take that out to the ball. That's dirty talk, okay? You can't look at those kind of pictures, all this stuff, okay? And so what happens now, Abednego, then, all of these good little church guys, again, they're still stuck back here on this page right here, Abednego, okay? They're trying to figure out, right here, how do we have sexual needs, the women do. How do we rectify that and still be men of faith? How do we do this? Now, how do we deal with a dead bedroom situation where you're not getting any sexy time? Nobody's touching your pee-pee. You got a dead bedroom here, but you're trying to stay faithful in your marriage. First of all, covenant's been broken many times along the way for you to get to this place. Okay. So, but as a male, female too, huge. You still have need for regular and healthy sexual outlet. But what they've done, Ragnar, societally, they've taken all these tools away from the guys. Okay, made them jump through hurdles and follow the rules.
Why do you think they did that? I'm going to push the edge here a little bit, because I sit outside this loop a little bit, and it just frustrates the heck out of me. Why do you think they made this natural bodily function a shame? Why do you think the people in power did that?
It's power and control, buddy.
Yep.
Do you think it was to unstable men and to make them bad and to make brains and to make them weaker so that they were more easily to be manipulated like a gilded animal or a sheep, and they can guide them around much easier now? I mean, what do you do? What do you do to a stallion if you want to mellow it out? You castrate it, right? So they can't castrate, at least yet.
Cut it.
I mean, this is an election year. We'll see. Maybe a year from now we'll be getting castrated. Who knows? But you can't castrate at this point. But what do? They psychologically castrate men so they're docile, can be moved around, and don't ask questions of the people in power. So why do you think all these years they made men feel guilty and women feel guilty for sexuality? Because they know it's the strongest drive we have next breathing. And so if they make that wrong, they make breathing wrong. You're going to be walking around in circles all the time because you're insane, but you got this extreme drive that's wrong. Breathing's wrong. Gravity's wrong. And so your whole day, your mind is overtaken by this obsession that the thing you're driven to the most, that you were put here on earth by God to do, is wrong. And so now you're castrated psychologically. And now we manipulate you. We can take money, we can guilt you into this, guilt you into that. In my opinion, a lot of the shame came from just a power trip from men, not God. Power tripped men, not God. That's where this came from. That's my strong belief. And so this is not God. It's like, well, you know, we have people that have been on this before that can't say the word sex in their own marriage. Well, won that battle. A guy can't say sex to his own house, to his own wife. He can't say sex. That is
Ragnar, let me jump in here. We got some modulation on your side, and so I'm going to hold those thoughts there, okay? I know what you're saying, but it kind of cut in and out. you're saying that even the guys we've worked with, they can't still, Ragnar, if I heard you right, can you guys hear me okay on this? They're saying, look,
they can't say the word sex.
There you go. Yep, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
They can't say the word sex. And so the elite won that one. Whoever the power trip that put this in a million ago, 2 million ago, that made all shameful, that made breathing wrong. These guys can't say the word sex. You got grown men, 50-year-old men that can't say the word sex in their own house. And they have been emotionally and spiritually castrated. That the biggest drive they have that's been given to them by God, procreate, is wrong. Man did that to their fellow man, in my opinion. God didn't do that. But the problem is, everybody feels so shameful, but they think it's a God thing. I don't think it's a God. I think all this shame came from power to men being in charge, trying to get their own ends met through power manipulation. And they want to be overthrown. You see it today in modern society. Find one commercial in an hour or two on TV that shows a strong and confident man that's capable. None of them. They're still doing it. Now they do it with TV. It's doing it through the church. Before they just did church, they technology. Now they do it with cell phones, TV. Every ad you see is weak men. They're still making men walk around in circles like they're lobotomized and ashamed. But now they can do it much more efficiently with technology. Before they had technology, the only way they could get mass communication out was through the church. That was the only way they could do it, the church. And so these guys would guilt people because you want to control these men. You want to take their drive away. You want to make them ashamed of that. And if you make a guy's strongest drive wrong and ashamed, he didn't have energy to do anything else. He's walking around, especially if he thinks God's looking at him. If he thinks that came from God, he thinks God's up there with the secret camera looking at him. And he can see everything he's doing, and so the guy can't even function. He can't even think. If you're a 50-year-old man, 55-year-old man, and you can't say the word sex in your own house, they won. So I don't think this is a God thing at all. I think if everybody realizes this is not a God thing, the shame thing is not a God thing, it's a man-made thing to control men, to keep power in a power hierarchy in place, then I think this stuff clears up very quickly. Everybody's substituting an actual thing that came down from a man to control people as a God thing. In my opinion, those two are cognitive dissonance. Why would God give us a strong drive and then tell you not to use it? I mean, it's just insane.
You know, shame, Ragnar, shame is a man thing, okay? Shame is a man thing here, and it's buried in everybody, and it can come out Abednego in all the places. Let me go back, Ragnar, what you're talking about and how they control people. Okay. You guys remember, was our show here? Mel Gibson, Braveheart, back in the day. Was this 20 years ago? Whenever this was. Okay. At the beginning of the show, and it comes out later, he's got his babe and they want to go get married, right? You remember all this deal.
Prima nocta.
But the Earl, prima nocta, okay? This concept, this principle, prima nocta, is that this feudal lord, he gets a chance on every night before the wedding to go bang this babe. He makes every husband in the whole thing, in all his feudal lands, or however they want to categorize all that, he turns them all into cuckold guys. He gets to go bang their babes, okay? In the scene, with this Braveheart deal, you know, Mel Gibson and his girl, he said, off into the woods, we're running all over the countryside, and we're going to go have our deal. Okay, so you know, I'm not all that, except the analogy of it, Ragnar, about is how they entered shame in here, and all these guys were passive in all these ways. They controlled all that through sex as a primary instrument to drive shame and guilt. Why? For control and power. Okay, we see this on one I was like to watch. It's Vikings on History Channel. Okay. And there's some real powerful things on this too. I mean, if you don't think that resonated with people, this Viking show, History Channel, okay, why on earth do they have 24,000 ratings on Amazon? I have looked all over the place about things that had so many ratings, and I can't find them. I think 50 Shades of Grey is 16,000. So you're talking about that show, Vikings, right? Season 1. I think there were 24,000 reviews on this thing. Okay. And because it hit primal needs, primal desire in here. How do we create that? When we look at our own relationships, as we transition this back now, if this is so important, okay, as far as sexuality being a primal trigger, the church understands. Back in the day, and I still think they're actively involved in this somewhere. How do we put the brakes on those primal triggers so that we can control the men and the women? Okay, and they've done a huge mind job on all this. Okay,
listen,
I'm with you
the
on this.
biggest proof that what I just said is true is the fact that you, like you said, you go to the church house to get married and the courthouse to get divorced. That's the biggest piece of evidence that backs up what I just ranted about a minute ago. Because if it wasn't a control thing about money and control, and because they can throw a guy in jail, it doesn't make child support. They can throw a guy in jail. I mean, the state is in your bed as soon as you sign that paper. So if it truly wasn't about power trip and control, then you would go see it go to get married, and if it didn't work out after some counseling, you go see Abednego to get it dissolved. You wouldn't go to the courthouse. But the fact you go to the courthouse backs up everything I said about all the shameless stuff coming from the power trip, the elites, whoever's in charge. And now you see it through media, cell phones, and all the ads against men and all that kind of stuff. It's if you can see who they're most scared of. You know, the elites are most scared of a certain type of male. And that's why everything you see on there, the only type of male that can't protest without getting hit in the head and arrested and thrown in jail for 30 years are on this call right now. Everybody else can go out, protest, tear down monuments, tear everything. Nobody cares. They catch and release, catch and release. Why is that?
Yeah, but Ragnar, you guys better not meet out your church. You good little guys better not meet out. And in fact, we're going to cancel. Who did they cancel the other day on a con? Was it Doobie Brothers, right, or something like this? We got to cancel that thing, but we're going to still burn down all the buildings and all the courts and all the police stations, right? So, without turning it too much into.
Well, the thing is, they Sturgis rally. They have Sturgis motorcycle rally every year up north in North Dakota, South Dakota. And they were complaining. Now they were complaining about all the riots, no mass in there, but because Sturgis was up there in north, and it was a certain demographic, and tend to be more people that and so it was all over CNN, everything how bad it is, and oh my gosh, there's no mass, there's going to be a spike in COVID. They same group were saying nothing about these riots, nothing, about the disease spread of these riots. I mean, it's so obvious once you swallow, once you see things, once the smoke's blown away, and you see this very clearly, then the guilt and the shame go away because you realize this is not from God. This is manipulation from powerful men who want to remain in power. And once you realize that, then there's no guilt. Then they just blows away. It's once the awareness, once that switch flips in your head, see that this didn't come from God. This is control. If it came from God, we would get divorced in the church house. The fact that state is all that. And I've been through that game, with kids and all that kind of stuff, and it is a meat grinder, and it's a profit center, multi-billion-dollar profit center that they milk people like that. So anyway, I've off my rant.
But
Ragnar,
I didn't want to dig around this anymore. I just wanted to rip.
No, that's okay. Ragnar, here's the thing on this, and I'm going to go to you, Abednego, real quick. Is that I'm glad you brought this up about the shame. Once you understand how shame is directed and this hierarchy of shame, because this is perfect working in next week is class number 7 golden rings to relationship success. Is that number 7, the last one we're going to do next week. Okay. It's about shame and how to get relief from shame. So we're going to go into all this, but it ties really quickly. It ties really well in here, Abednego. There's a couple of things we look at then, because we talk about all this stuff. Is there even some hope? I know we've got to, wrap this up for too long, but we do have time on there. Abednego, let me go to you on this. There's a lot of guys in our church who are dying out there. Their relationships, the guys don't have any. We talked about this before on another show. About 70% of all the divorces are initiated by females. down at the courthouse to go find a lawyer, get new rules, whatever. Okay. So we got to be aware of all this stuff in our modern society about what rules are being played in the game here on this. You referenced a little bit about Abednego, about some of the counseling sessions you've had, and those, obviously we're not talking about individual names, so we're just talking about people you work with. I work with a lot of people, stretched from coast to coast here. Ragnar, you do also. That's been well documented in anybody who's paying attention to what we've been doing over the last 2.5 years. Abednego, these are things that you see in the church that are near and dear to you, because you marry people. You officiate them. I mean, let me, you marry people, you officiate, okay? And you're involved in premarital counseling and stuff like this. Ragnar, both of you have thoughts on the importance then of vetting, okay? Ragnar, in a minute, I want you to go into that analogous side about, you're buying a truck, and you can get into that in a minute. Abednego, are we vetting people wrong then? How do we vet for sexual compatibility, right? Because that's really, sounds like to me, that's where we need to be going. You're married, and everybody wants to marry a good little princess, Disneyland, virgin, all this deal. And then you have no idea what's under the hood. You didn't do any vetting. You don't know what's going on. Too much shame, church, God, Jesus, angels, all that. Abednego, talk about how important it is then to vet.
I'm not sure that we're vetting wrong. As much as I think we've been trained very poorly. We don't live in the culture that the Bible was written in. Biblical culture was way different. Women had zero rights in biblical times. They relied on a man for everything. And so men were pretty much almost what you would say forced alphas. They had to lead in their families. They had to make decisions. They had to keep the bears away. They had to put food on the table. They had to do all those things. Women relied solely, their sole existence was wrapped up in the man that they had. And so what you see is that the Bible doesn't address a lot of the topics that we talk about directly, because it wasn't an issue in biblical times. What we should be able to do is look at people like David, and we've done that, and look at their alpha characteristics. And we should be able to mimic that. We should be able to learn from that. I think Ragnar was dead on when he was talking about these movies that are out there, and we have the answers right in front of us. It's right there. But as Christians, we back up from it because, oh, well, no, wait a minute. That's 50 Shades of Grey. That's naughty. That's bad stuff. We can't look at that. We can, as Christians, so many times, we think the only place that we could ever find an answer is in the Bible. And for some of us that are Christians, it's only in the KJV it's only the King James version. You can't find it anywhere else. I'm kind of poking fun there. But we've got to realize that we're not operating in the same culture that the Bible was written. And so the Bible doesn't address, how do you become this alpha dude? How do you draw the affection and the passion and of your wife? How do you get her to be enthusiastic? I think for the most part in biblical times, I don't think they had a whole lot of trouble with that kind of thing. I really don't. They just didn't. But nowadays we do, and so we do need to learn from. We need to be able to. I think we need to free Christian men and Christian women up to look to secular sources to find information that's going to help them in their marriage. And if it's true, if it's good secular information, you're going to be able to line it up with the Bible. We've talked before about that. If it's truth, then you're going to be able to reconcile that to the Bible. And so, I think, again, Ragnar was dead on. We've got to learn from what's out there, what's getting women all worked up, what's getting them fired up. and then go be that guy. I know a couple in our church who they kind of let it out, and then they're really embarrassed that, oh yeah, we went to the latest 50 Shades of Grey, and they told they told the guy in the pulpit that, and I didn't react anyway. I didn't shame them by any stretch. I was like, oh yeah. And then, come to find out, the guy said, hey, that night was pretty fantastic.
That bedroom ain't dead.
Yeah.
Well, and I think listen, man, so I know there's a lot of hope about to go on this. Okay. There's a lot of hope, guys. Now, again, we're dealing with two different demographics. We're dealing with people who are dating in a church. I mean, and also just people who are dating. They don't have to be affiliated somehow. Because I think we've done a total mind job on the way relationships work in a church. But there's hope. There's hope for also people. Now, it's different, but there's still hope for people who've been married for a while. Okay. One of the biggest things about how all of this works, Ragnar, is that there's got to be some mystery on this. Okay. So you got to have mystery. And that's harder and harder to do the longer and longer you've been married, and there's familiarity levels that rise every time. And so that kind of gets tougher too. Okay. But I just want to know, because there are hopes, and there's a lot of hope out there, and we want to make sure, okay, and we give them some practical things like we talked about. We got another few minutes here. I want to go back to you, Ragnar, on this. There's some things that we've talked about before, and I like how you put some of these things, but before we get into some specific things about people, because people say this all the time, well, you got to step up and you got to be the man. And a lot of people don't even know what that means. Okay. But it's a total shame lever that modern society, with this feminine imperative, used to shame guys. Oh, you got to step up. You got to man up. But nobody tells you how to do this thing. So, Ragnar, we're going to get into that in a second. But before we do, we're going to go back to this idea, Ragnar, on vetting and looking under the hood and what this means. You've talked about our favorite people who like to shame everybody, this Baptist preacher out here. Go into that a little bit, because it's also has analogous side to dating and vetting. Go into that a little bit. I love when you get into that, rant or not rant, however fired up you can get about this. There's a side of that works in conversation to build this case on there, Ragnar, and on the vetting side of it. Go ahead and take that away if you would.
Well, we discussed before, Bassett, if you grab the most conservative Baptist preacher in this country, where, everybody's conservatively dressed, and then the skirts and everything. And if you told him, if he was interested in buying a vehicle, he had to buy it sight unseen. Or he could look at the outside, but he can't test drive it. He can't look under a hood. He can't get his brother-in-law, that's a mechanic, to look at it. He can't do anything. He can look at the outside. He can sit inside it, and that's it. He can't do anything. But every vehicle he buy it that way. He would say, you're crazy. There's no way I'm going to. If it was like $1,000 piece of junk, he would say, there's no way I'm going to buy that. I took a look at the hood. I haven't been in that thing. I don't know what's in it. I drive it on. Does the radio work? I mean, let me flip this switch. Let me flip that switch. Turn the ignition. There's no way he would put a dump down for that. He would tell anybody that would do it. He himself would tell them the foolish. But that same picture of this shame and beliefs will tell a young 8-year-old man or 20-year-old man that's dating a girl that if he tries to inspect the girl and he kind of to see if they're compatible in a situation, if he does that, he's wrong. It's a sin. And that's, to me, a relationship with your potential wife or woman for the rest of your life, the financial investment, the emotional investment with potential children and things like that, the amount of exposure you have there, if there's divorce, financial exposure, legal exposure, if you get child support, you're in jail, all that stress that can come there, that major investment of emotional love and time and all pain of itself. He says you can't vet that, but you can, for $1,000 junk car, you go under the hood of that and make sure you get your brother mechanic. To me, that is insane. I mean, it's just insane. But I guarantee you, the same guy that's C5 that came to the sex house also wasn't able to vet by it. I guarantee you, if he said the word sex, there was zero vetting going there.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah. Right. I think we just go back here. Remember a few years ago, still, I mean, look, I still like Duck Dynasty. Okay. I want to make sure. Abednego, did you hear Ragnar when he was saying? Mine kind of cut in and out, but I got the idea of it. If we need to go over some of that again, it's fine. You remember back in the day on Duck Dynasty, and I think it was maybe Phil, and he was talking to his grandkids about vetting and how do you know if she's the right girl, and this is an extension of that. Obviously, this goes another level, but he thought, hey man, how do you know if you didn't even know if she could cook? And she's going to be your wife for how many years? Okay. How do you don't even know if she can cook anything? Okay. Of course, some of your modern people got all fired up and said, oh, she's supposed to just be in the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant and cooking for day long. His thing is still about vetting. If you don't know what she can do, take care of you, nurturing side, whatever, Ragnar, you're talking about the same thing, but you're talking about sexual compatibility here. Okay. There's no way you buy something sight unseen like that without, you got to take it out on the interstate and get this thing up to 80 or whatever your number is, and I've never seen a guy buy a car, by the way, without they get in, crank the gas up a little bit. It's still in park, but they want to hear how it sounds, right? And a bed to go. Then you know what is next? I don't care if you're 13 or you're 33. You want to turn that stereo on and turn it up to full volume. I want to see what's in this thing, okay? It doesn't matter that you can change the stereo at any time, okay? But on a deal where you're talking about, Ragnar, looking under the hood for sexual compatibility here, all right? You have an opportunity here in a marriage where if this goes sideways or goes south on you and you're in court, you got to give up half of everything you have when you go down to the courthouse and play by their rules, okay? And that costs way more than some vehicle out here. You're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars on this deal. I mean, listen, go ask Jeff Bezos and Amazon what it cost him last year to break up his lifelong marriage on this, billions of dollars, okay? And you wouldn't check compatibility on a vehicle that costs several $1,000 bucks. And how do we work that? How do we rectify that? Okay. And so there's some different things. I think we've got to do a better job in vetting. We've got a whole series on that we're going to do. We have done that a number of different times in our group, in our classes, about how do you vet people for compatibility, not only sexual compatibility, obviously, but personality. Okay. In terms of submissiveness, these kinds of things. And so before we get into some real specific things, Abednego, do you have any other comments on that side? We heard Ragnar.
Yeah, I think, there's this tension that I think you always feel as a Christian between living out your faith and obedience to Christ and to his word. And yet, how do you do these things? How do I know that she's going to respond to me in ways that I would want to, and things like that? I think part of the issue is maybe we just know way too much. Maybe we just have way too much information. I don't know what the specific numbers are, but I know it's extremely high of young kids now who see pornography and view pornography, and you look at that and you think, wow, that's the way it's supposed to be. I just wonder if two people got married, and it's sad that you can't go question a lot of people because you don't even know two people who are virgins who have never viewed pornography at all, how they would rate their marital satisfaction and their sexual satisfaction. Because they don't know any better. They don't know, oh, well, Sally Joe felt like this and Susie felt like this and, this other girl felt like this and my girl, she don't feel the same or she don't kiss the same. Or she, if you had nothing else to compare to, how would that affect things? The problem is we live in a society where we probably do have that we can compare to. And so I think that flips in there. It kind of muddies up the water and it makes it really difficult. But at the end of the day, yeah, how do you know that this little girl who you grew up in the same church, maybe a different church. She's a good little Christian girl and comes from a good Christian family, and she's been raised up right. And how do you know that she's going to be into sex? How do you know that? How do you know that for sure? And I think there are ways. There's definitely indicators. Are there any IOIs? Is there indication of interest whatsoever? You know, I'm not saying that necessarily. I wouldn't go to the extreme that you need to go have sex with her to see if you're compatible. But I really believe that you can tell. Is she into you? Is she passionate? Does she close her eyes when she's kissing you? Is she embracing you? Is she bringing you in close? Is she kind of pushing you away? I think there are lots of indicators of interest that that you can go off of that can let you know whether or not she's going to be into you. But I do think we probably do a lousy job of vetting. Basically, the way I see a lot of guys vet is, yeah, she's pretty hot. She's into me. I think I'll go marry her, you know. And sometimes, I mean, dude, anymore, I deal with a lot of young people, and you know, girls are so desperate now to get a commitment from a guy. You know, they're so desperate that they don't vet hardly at all. You know, this guy, okay, he's can fog up a mirror. He looks pretty decent. Maybe he's gonna be able to make some money. I better jump on this. You know, it's either that or they're so stinking picky that they gloss over guys who would be great for them. I want to hit on one thing though, because I've seen this before. Girls, if there's any girls watching, or if you're a dad and you've got a girl, tell her to stop waiting on God to send her somebody. That is the worst. That is the absolute worst advice that we could ever give a young girl. Just wait, and God will send your prince to you. No, he won't. He's not going to do that. Read the book of Ruth. Read the book of Ruth. Ruth had to go to Boaz because Boaz was oblivious. And she had to lay at his feet because the dude had no idea. He had no concept. She had to express interest. And so sometimes girls, you got to go out and get that guy. But it's crazy. It's crazy what we say in the church about sexual things. It's crazy what we believe in the church about marriage and about what's right and what's wrong and how we go about things. I am all for being biblical in everything that we do. But you definitely have to vet people. My goodness. You know, I think Phil Robertson was right. You're going to marry a girl and you're going to be married to her for 50 years and you don't even know she can cook. You know, you're going to be married to a girl and you don't even know she'll French kiss you. You're going to be married to a girl and you don't even know.
Hey, can we mention French kissing on here? No, is that?
Well, we might have went too far.
We're breaking some rules there or something.
We might want to bleep that one out. But you know, and that's so true. I mean, the thing is, what do we know about marriage and about sex? Sex is really, is there anything more critical in a marriage than sex? I mean, no. The Bible tells us that as a man, the man is going to leave his father and mother, be united with his wife, and the two will become one flesh. That's sex. They're united together in sex. The word picture given, if you take that back to original language, is lamination. Like you're laminating two pieces of wood. You're gluing this together. It's literally the glue that holds the marriage together. It's sex. And so sex is super important. That's why in premarital counseling, I look at the young ladies. Sometimes they're a little older ladies, but I'll look at them and I will say, unless you're willing to have sex with this guy at least 3, 4, 5 times a week, maybe more, Let's not even do this. It is that important. It's that important.
Abednego, I'm going to say this. There's a couple of things. I don't want to, we're going to have a whole other show, multiple shows on vetting. But I would say one of the things we kind of laugh at, but we only laugh because sometimes we go through that pain on this, is that just go ahead and take your girl ballroom dancing. Ragnar, this has been just primo for you, okay? If she can't let you lead in ballroom dancing, either freestyle or in a lesson, you need to go do something else, okay? So that's one of the things we talk about vetting. Another thing that I want to just say here as a couple bonus items, because we got to get into some 1921 concepts. We got some stuff, and we're going to get to some practical stuff too, okay? Is that you need this girl who, it doesn't matter, man, whatever you send her, a note, an email, a voicemail, a phone call. If she's not, heck yes, I'm on board. I'm doing this. But if you get the girl who is, wait, what is it? Now, where are we going to be? Now, what are we going to drive? How much money do we need? Where are we going to stay? Well, I don't care about all that, okay? This happened to me 3 days ago, okay? This happened a few days ago. There's a big event coming up, okay? A big event that's coming up in January. And I said to one of my kids, okay, so one of the boys, I said, hey, we're going to get some people together and we're going to go do this other thing. And he said, well, and so, well, okay, when's this going to be? And I said, no, this is going to be, I don't know, 6-7 months out yet, whenever. Okay. And I said, hey, do you think so-and-so might want? And man, he got an answer back in 30 seconds. Yep, I'm going. Heck yes, I'm going. It wasn't about, hey, where are we going to be? Hotel? Who's going to be here? How are we going to drive? What are we going to do? It was just, I'm going. I'm in. If you're in, I'm in. Okay. Now, as far as vetting, you don't really need a whole lot more than that. Okay. If they're making you jump over hurdles and follow rules and doing that, means they see you as a beta, and you don't want any of that deal at all. Believe me, Ragnar, this is the kiss of death on this thing. Okay. Because what they're going to do, they're going to make rules for all these guys that they don't eventually want anyway. Okay. So I don't want to get into a whole thing here on vetting because, again, there's too much content there that we're going to get into at another time. You brought up this thing, Abednego, about marriage being a sex contract. It's got to be. If you look at it some other way, you're naive or stupid or ignorant. Listen, if someone showed up and you're about to get married and your gal says, oh, well, I don't know if we're going to get into sex too much, you need to run the other way too. That's just a straight up vetting call. Okay. Because if you can't look without the sex, it's just a really complicated, goofy friendship here. Okay. So when I say marriage is a sex contract, people out there listen, you need to believe this side. Okay. And full-heartedly jump on board with this concept. I'm going to go right now to 1921 and explain this, because one of the things that is important in all this stuff, okay, a few years ago, I think 2017, Harvard did a big study. And I think it was 52,000 guys over 30 years. They tracked all of their frequency for sex, masturbation, all this deal. And what they found was, if you're not having a regular, healthy sexual outlet 19 to 21 times a month, okay, 19 to 21 times a month, guys, if you're not having a healthy sexual outlet 19 to 21 times a month, your incidence of prostate cancer increases. I think it was like 32%. Okay, now you can go Google it. Harvard study, sexual study that Harvard did. So you need to dig into this. But the reason this is so important, and no thing on this to go, because people will say, well, that's not scriptural, but out. Again, if this is 50,000 guys over 30 years, and Harvard found significant data on this, okay? 50,000 guys, 30 years, okay? 19 to 21 times a month, you got to keep healthy prostate going. Abednego, real quick, short insight because we found some stuff here. And if it's true, again, I'm going to go back to you, that if it's true, there's going to be biblical backside on this. Go ahead on this real quick.
Yeah. And so there's not chapter and verse that says thou shalt have sex 19 to 21 times a week. There's you don't find that, or 19 to 21 times a month. You don't find that. But what you do find, again, back to 1 Corinthians 7, where Paul's talking, and Paul says, "Do not deprive each other except by mutual consent, and for a time, so that you may devote yourself to prayer, then come back together again, so that Satan may not get a foothold." And so if you take, okay, so you talk prayer and fasting, and there's so many days set aside for that. Then you take aside where the Bible would have said that a woman is unclean because of her period, and you take that amount of time away, it lines up with Scripture. 19 to 21 times, it would be all the other days that are available for you to be able to have a hand job, blow job, sex, actual intercourse, whatever. So it lines up. To me, I can reconcile that very well with Scripture. So it doesn't surprise me that there would be a consequence, a physical consequence, if you don't have sex that often. Again, this is the lamination of the marriage. We're laminating it over and over and over and over, 19 to 21 times a month. Guys, not a year. Not 19 to 21 times a year, 19 to 21 times in a month. And you're laminating that over and over again. It's not surprising to me that there would be a very bad physical consequence for not doing that.
Abednego, I got to stop you. I got you freaking me out. Blow jobs, hand jobs. You're freaking me out here. Okay?
My head's spinning right now. My head. I thought French kissing was going to be enough, but I guess not. My head's spinning right now.
No, there got to be a sin. Somebody has to introduce shame. Okay.
Of the three, I should probably be the one that's not saying all these things, huh?
No, but somebody needs to jump in and introduce shame somewhere, or something's going to really go off the rails here. But I'm glad you brought this up. 1921. Listen, I'm just going to say this real quick. Again, if you want to dig into this a little bit more, go check out our other shows, okay? Because we talk about this quite a bit on episode 1 on 7 golden rings, class 1 and class 2, right? Is that the clinical definition of a dead bedroom, okay, is less than 1 time a month on sex, okay? So I think it's less than 10 times a year. We're talking about to have healthy sex, healthy prostate, healthy relationship, healthy bonding, healthy lamination of that relationship. You got to have 1921 times sexual activity a month, not 1921 times a year, okay? And so people, all this stuff, sex, guys, marriage is a sex contract. Ragnar, let me come back to you, because I think people forget all about this. They've been married for a few years, and now their big idea about foreplay, point to their crotch, and man, that's supposed to get some girl hopping out here. Okay, point to, and we joke about this in our own group. We point to the cock and get everybody excited. I mean, you got to have a really great point to the crotch move if you're going to get someone excited just doing that. And so, Ragnar, there is hope, okay? But we've got to change some of the things we're doing on this. You can't just point to your crotch and think some gal's going to be excited for this thing after how many years of marriage, and there's no mystery. So, one of the things that you've helped us in a lot of ways is that you don't just start right date and expect it's going to be some grief play. Not only that day, but early in the week. And talk about how you build this mystery. How do you set the stage, cultivate this for if you want to have happy ending? I mean, Abednego's over here talking about blowjobs and hand jobs and everything else. He's getting carried away. We got to get him settled down, okay? So how do we do this thing in a way where you're getting this good little girl over here? Because I'm telling you, that good little girl, innocent little girl that you see at church, she still can be your wild cowgirl over here in the bedroom. And Ragnar, walk us through, because we promised all these guys they're going to have hope. Go ahead and take it away on what that means for them and how they can restore that.
Well, we got about 15 minutes here, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of rapid fire here for a few minutes, and then you can clean it up. She wants, again, it goes back to what I said a half hour ago, the prime switches. The primal switches, no matter what is said on MSNBC and these other shows, there's primal switches there. If she hasn't been abused and she's into men, there are primal switches there that they have a lot of dust on them, but some of those switches are, she wants a guy to take charge. She doesn't want a guy to be abusive verbally or anything like that, but to take charge, to have a plan, to also be assertive. And so she feels safe, protected, and she feels desired. She wants to have those feelings. A lot of the guys that are raised in the church think it's wrong for them to overtly show a woman that there's sexual energy there. I'm talking about touching her per se, but just, a lot of these guys suppress, these nice guys suppress that energy so much. It's so bland. She doesn't feel any spark whatsoever. Even if she likes the guy, she feels no spark. He's so afraid to accidentally bump into her, or his knee might touch her knee or something like that. And so that shows in her hindbrain, her primal mindset, that shows lack of confidence on his part. But she wants a man that, if she's attracted to, shows sexual energy to her. They're attracted to her. All that stuff's there. So you want to plan dates. You want to surprise on things. When she says you want to all kind of stress her. I mean, to this day with my girl, we've been together a while now, I will intentionally wait. She wants me to tell her the day before where we're going on a date because she wants to lay out all these dresses and all this stuff. I still don't. I mean, I'll do it half the time. The other half the time, I still hit her about an hour. I'll wait for her to text me, what's the dress code? We're going tonight, And the reason I do that is because she gets irritated at me, but it ain't boring. She doesn't know. Am I wearing jeans? Am I wearing a skirt? Am I wearing a dress? Do I need heels? I mean, she's frantically figuring this out. Oh, I said, I'm sorry, baby. I was busy. I forgot to text you. Listen, an hour ahead of time, she's flying through the closet looking for clothes. Trust me, she wasn't doing that in her last situation, okay? I intentionally pull that string. Sometimes I'll say, yeah, tomorrow we're going to go so-and-so. You need a dress, da-da-da. But there's still times, I'll wait till an hour ahead of time. And she's blowing up my phone. Oh, by the way, gosh, I'm sorry, baby. Listen, I was busy. I had a phone call. Listen, yeah, you're gonna need nice casual. We're gonna go to some music or whatever. But she's sitting there, her lizard brain going. That string's just a fin, and she's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be not dressed properly. And then I'll catch a little flack from it. She'll text me back, and then we're in the car. She'll give me a little bit of, I told you to let me know. What we're going to wear. And I'm sorry, whatever, forgot. But she's not bored. She's excited for that whole hour. And she's finally getting dressed in the last second. And then we're going to go do our plans. And I have something planned. We're going to get a little dessert here. We're going to do this here. Maybe we'll do a little dance, listen to some music, whatever. It's all planned. We come home. I take charge of the bedroom, too. We have some music on, maybe a little slow dancing, light a candle, a little, most women like being undressed. It's a dominance move. Not fast. I mean, there's times where it's that kitchen, you just take that old shirt and just take the buttons off of it. But as a whole, though, the vast majority of women like to be undressed. It's a dominance move. It makes them feel special, like they're present, you're unwrapping. And so you slowly undo those buttons, that kind of thing, and slowly undress that woman. And you're building that sexual tension, that sexual energy. Take some time. Take 5 minutes to get her clothes off. Take some time. And it's powerful. So you start the whole time where I said, I kind of mess with her a little bit sometimes about not telling her what the dress code. But you just you're not boring. Just before you do something, or before you decide not to do something, ask yourself, is this boring? Is this going to add or decrease boredom? And just try to do things that aren't boring, that you'll find interesting, But always remember, you're trying to trip those primal triggers a little bit that you see on these movies that they play on Entertainment Channel every weekend on Saturday night. You watch those movies, there's always those movies that they play all the time. Sweet Home Alabama is a comedy, but her high school sweetheart is the alpha in that movie. And you just watch his behavior. You watch The Notebook. Ryan Gosling's the alpha in the movie. You watch his behavior. And so you watch these, and it's right there. And the reason I've asked my girl, she knew about this stuff, so I started dating her, and I kind of pointed out behind the scenes on that. And she's watched that movie for 10 years, and she goes, and I said, do you understand now why you were attracted? She goes, absolutely. Ryan Gosling's character, why I like that movie. Or why do you, and at the end, when he grows up and he becomes James Garner, then he's compassionate there with her when she's in that facility, and he's really loving, and they die together and stuff. So he's got that compassionate alpha. Ryan Gosling in the beginning, he cares for more edgy, and then he goes to war and stuff. And then as he's an old man, he's James Garner, and he's very compassionate. He's compassionate alpha, totally. And the same thing, Sweet Home Alabama. The guy's kind of edgy. He was a nobody when she left to go to New York to design clothes. Well, he's got an entrepreneur business, is really successful now. He keeps it kind of quiet. She comes home and just has a happy discovery that all of a sudden he's really successful now. Her nobody from Alabama is really successful, and he always puts her in place. He doesn't tolerate her fit test stuff, and that's why my girl liked that movie all those times. She's that guy. In 50 Shades, a different version of that. So that's what it is. So it's right there. If you can just, Sweet Home Alabama. I think most people in the church can watch Sweet Home Alabama. I think people can get by with Notebook and Sweet Home Alabama, and there's all the information, all the intel you need to have a successful relationship. If you watch those two movies and follow what Ryan Gosling does and what I forgot the dude and that plays her high school sweetheart that she was still married to in Sweet Home Alabama, you'll find him. You kind of follow that stuff and understand that millions of women in this country are attracted to those two characters. Millions, and they watch it over and over. My girls watch those two movies probably 20 times each. There's a reason. So all I have to do is show up and be those guys. I mean, some of that stuff I kind of do naturally, but it's not hard. That's why we're together. Is I tend to be more the way than not, passionate alpha, and so it's easy. Then it's not work. Then she's calling all over you. Then it's not work. Does that make sense?
Ragnar, let me say this. Yeah, I mean, it's really, really good. And here's the problem, though, right? All of us have been to some historical landmark. Maybe the guy's over here and he's in character. Maybe you went to go see the blacksmith. Okay, we were at Plymouth Plantation.
I'm losing you.
Yeah, it was a year ago. And you go see the blacksmith, and he's all in character the whole time. Okay, and he's talking about who these people were that came in on the Mayflower and the whole deal and whatever. If he slipped up and talked about some modern day thing from 2020, it would ruin the whole episode here, okay? Guys do this all the time. They step out of character. They go back into their regular day life. Well, I mean, everyone's been to Disneyland. You got those characters. They never step out of character. That's why the fantasy is so good. Okay. What we do so many times, we throw out in the middle of this thing. Ragnar, we've talked about this how many times, okay? Guy, you lose all of the intimacy, you lose all the mystery on this when you step out of character. That's one of the hardest things is that Abednego, I mean, you see it all the time. Guys think they're going to go book, chapter, and verse and start talking about some Bible study thing and then jump in bed with the girl. This is not getting any girl excited when you go book, chapter, and verse, guys, okay? And guys think and I don't even know if this has ever been done in history, is that some guy used virtue to get a girl into bed. Okay, I mean, I don't know how this works, that you get a girl. So guys step out of character all the time, Ragnar. When you're talking about mystery, when you're talking about your girl and you're pulling the string, as that's been in other shows, if you want to go get a hold of that concept, is pulling the string. It's like a yarn in front of a cat here. They have mystery. They don't know what's coming next, okay? And that's one of the things, Ragnar, we've talked about. You put algebra in the middle of this thing, they lose interest immediately. Now, whether that was on your date, at the restaurant, before the restaurant, driving there, they fit test you. Where are we going to go? Where are we going to go? And you don't pass that fit test, you stepped out of character. She no longer thinks you're an alpha. She no longer interested in you. There's no mystery on it. She doesn't have any interest in this anymore. There's no happy.
One thing I want to say is that the more you can decrease shame, the easier it's going to be for you to trigger her primal switches. The higher your shame that you have internally, the more difficult it's going to be for you to trigger her primal switches, because you won't have the courage to take those chances. You won't have the courage to put yourself out there and to keno her, to casual, not sexually, but just touch her, to build some intimacy, or to go for a kiss, or to plan a date. And say, the more shame you have, you're not going to approach subjects where maybe they're kind of slightly edgy to get her kind of turned on. The more shame you have internally, the less success or efficacy, if I can use that word, that you're going to have in flipping her primal sexual triggers. The least, as your shame decreases, the higher that will increase. And I'm sure Bendigo, you speak to that as far as people you counsel or people you've seen, and in all three of us, our own lives. Once we can get rid of that shame, we'll take more chances. And surprise, surprise, when you take more chances, you get more success, right? But what stifles the chances? The guy's taking chances. That's shame. That shame stifling. Got to get rid of the shame. Then you can start tripping those primal triggers, and then good things happen.
Yeah, it's the same thing. When you're looking for a hot time with your girl, she has to be in character, okay? If she's got 3 kids hanging around her all the time, it's very hard to build that intimate setting that you're trying. It's the same with the guy, okay? I mean, if you're trying to, I think it was as good as it gets, There's a scene where some kid vomited on her, whatever. And our man here is trying to get into an intimate situation, and he's got some kid's infant's puke all over him. It's hard to turn that and parlay that deal into sexy time, okay, when now you can't imagine her in any other sexual role because she's got kids vomit all over her, okay? So we want this all the time. Everyone talks about 50 Shades of Grey or porn or this or that or what gets the guys all excited. Listen, guys, in your ways, you got to do all you can to get this girl excited too, and to foster that, to cultivate this thing. When you step out of character and start bringing in algebra or weird things, or you let her show her too much weakness, or you don't pass fit tests, you've killed all the intimacy that could have happened on this, guys. So I know we've got to close this down, guys, real quickly on this. This has been a good one. We can have a follow-up, and we will. Okay, 7 golden rings, again, from the PMC boys. The Positive Masculinity Crusade on this is that class number 6, how to have hot marriages is really what we're looking at. I want to go around the ring on here. Ragnar, a couple takeaways on this before we close it out. A couple takeaways. What do you got for us on this, buddy?
Well, I think if you can't honestly define the problem and use the vocabulary necessary to clearly define the problem in every angle and every facet, then you can't solve the problem. So if you can't say the word sex in your house as a 55-year-old male, that's a big part of the problem. And the shame, you've been waterboarded by shame your entire life. And until you get rid of that shame and be able to at least say the word sex in your life, you're not going to be able to fix this stuff. And the bad guys won. The bad guys won. If you can't say the word sex in your life, the bad guys won. And to me, that's a poor return on your investment for spending Wednesday and Sunday in church for 40, 50 years of your life if you can't say the word sex in your life. It's done you a disservice. A different church with a different practicing philosophy would have been more beneficial, in my opinion.
Real quick on this, Abednego, you got any takeaways from us on this, buddy?
Yep. Stay away from algebra. You need to be pinging the right side of her brain. That's emotions and feelings and those kind of things. If you're giving her all the scripture verses about why all the reasons she should have sex with you, then she's sitting there thinking about all the reasons she should not have sex with you. And so stay away from algebra. And then another one, we really didn't talk a lot about it, but it's pretty easy. Have a mission, guys. Have a mission that's not her, and your mission isn't about sex. Just have a mission that's yours, that's something that you do, something that you're building, something, maybe a business or something. God designed her to come alongside you, not for her to be the mission, but for her to come alongside you. She wants your attention. And so she will gladly come alongside you in your mission. And so get a mission.
One of the things that I heard recently, give a girl everything she wants, okay? And she'll be miserable, okay? It should be about your mission. That's what it should be about, okay? And I guess there's a lot of takeaways I have on all this stuff, okay? And one of them is really, obviously, as far as I'm going to write this down, mystery, because you got to keep the mystery on this. And that's the hardest thing in relationships that have been going on for a while, is that you've got to have this mystery and you've got to keep building that. That's something you've got to continue to work on. Ragnar, you talked about this, is switches. Okay. You brought this up a bed ago, pinging. You got to keep pinging her on this side. Okay. And I think one of the things, the biggest thing is that everybody needs, and it works really well because you need shame relief. It works really well for us because we're going to go into this heavy duty next time. Okay. So we'll get in class number 7 next week on shame relief. This is my opinion, we have this last, but it's the most important one of all of them in many regards. Okay. And so this is something you guys can look forward to next time on shame relief. We'll get into that. There's a lot of things that you can do out there, guys, to keep things hot. We'll go into that some other times. Again, we had a little bit here, but we didn't get to explore it as much as we probably would like to. But I promise you, we'll get back to that another time and explore that. Any other closing thoughts you guys had before we sign off here?
Yeah, I just want to say that without shame relief, none of this other stuff's possible. It's just that simple. If you get rid of the shame, you can't do any of this other stuff.
Yeah, it really is.
So that's why the last one's, in my opinion, so important. You have to get rid of that man-made shame. That man-made shame that was poured into your head before you even had a vote on what was going into your head. And you have to get rid of that shame. Once you get rid of that shame, all your dreams come true on the other side of shame elimination. That's when they come true. That's when you start getting massive change as far as a positive change in yourself, what you can achieve in life, the assertiveness and leadership you can provide, the confidence, the image increase itself once you get rid of that shame. But if you have shame, you won't take chances. Be afraid to. You'll be afraid of what the church says or what your parents say, what your friends say, what you're going to say. You have to get that shame. None of the stuff we've talked about these other classes is possible if you get rid of shame.
Shame is
a concrete block on your leg. It's an emergency brake in your Mercedes.
Shame is the linchpin on all this.
That's the biggest thing.
It just really is. Shame is the key. Shame is the lever. Bendigo, you good on this? Where we got, buddy?
Yeah, I just wish I would have had this information 20 years ago. I've looked in all the Christian formats in the Christian bookstore for things that would help, and never could find anything. And we finally went secular. We decided to put it in a Christian format. I hope it's helping a bunch of Christian guys, because I'm sick and tired of seeing guys kill themselves because over a situation that can be easily remedied. And so I'm glad that people are along on the journey.
I want to say this, Bendigo, this key part right here, that we've all seen this, and we've all had guys close to us who decided to end their life. Okay. And, it's been one of the highlights of my life to have you guys here with us all doing this together. Okay. We guys walking on the earth right now because of this effort. Okay. And we had to go through elders tribunals and all this other stuff and have hate dumped on us. Okay. Because we went to different ways out there where people aren't used to. Okay. And that's one of the things that we've not been afraid to do. And it's worked. We've helped a lot of guys. So I just want to thank you guys for being here. Everybody on here, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below. Hit that subscribe button if you would. And send us your questions on this at Crusader. Okay. It's Crusader 1921. Crusader 1921 at Gmail. Okay. So whatever questions you have, we do get those, and I'm thankful for that. On the email, Crusader1921 at Gmail. You guys have a great week, and we'll come back to you next week with the topic of shame relief. Thanks, guys. You guys have a great day.
See you.
See ya.